Hey there, Reddit explorers. Before we dive into today's shocking story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss any of these jaw-dropping tales. If you enjoy the video, smash that like button, it really helps the channel grow. They say you never truly know someone until you see them when they think no one is watching. In my case, I discovered the brutal truth about my fiancée just 3 weeks before our wedding day. What I thought would be the happiest time of my life turned into a nightmare that still haunts me, even now. My name is Alex, and I was engaged to Natalie for 2 years. We met at a friend's birthday party, and it felt like we clicked instantly. She was beautiful, charismatic, and seemed to genuinely care about me. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, we moved in together, and by our first anniversary, I had proposed. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. I believed it too. I still remember the night we met. It was at my college friend Dave's 30th birthday, a casual gathering at a local bar with about 20 people. I was sitting at the counter nursing a beer, feeling a bit out of place as always in larger social gatherings, when Natalie walked in. She was wearing a simple black dress, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her laugh immediately drawing my attention from across the room. She was with a group of friends, but somehow within 30 minutes she had made her way to me. "You look like you could use some company," she had said, sliding onto the stool next to mine. "I'm Natalie." I introduced myself, expecting the conversation to fizzle out quickly like most of my interactions at parties. But it didn't. We talked for hours, about everything from our careers. She was a marketing executive, I was a financial analyst, to our shared love of obscure 80s movies. By the end of the night, I had her number, and by the end of the week, we were inseparable. Natalie was everything I wasn't: outgoing, adventurous, the life of every party. I was more reserved, methodical, a planner. She pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I provided stability she claimed to have been looking for. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. Our first year together was a whirlwind. Weekend trips to nearby cities, meeting each other's friends and families, building what I believed was an unshakable foundation. On our first anniversary, I took her to the rooftop restaurant where we'd had our first official date and proposed under the stars. She cried, said yes, and we spent the next year planning what was supposed to be the perfect wedding. Natalie had always been social and outgoing while I was more reserved. I loved that about her, how she could light up a room. She had a close group of friends that she would hang out with regularly, and I never thought twice about it. Why would I? I trusted her completely, until that fateful Thursday night. I was supposed to be on a business trip to Chicago that week, a 4-day conference that would have brought in a big client for my firm. Natalie had kissed me goodbye on Monday morning, telling me how much she'd miss me and promising to have a special dinner ready when I returned on Friday. "I'll make your favorite lasagna," she had said, wrapping her arms around my neck, "and maybe something special for dessert." The suggestive tone in her voice had made me almost reconsider the trip, but the conference got canceled last minute when our potential client pulled out of the deal. Rather than waste the hotel booking, my boss told us all to take a couple of days off and come back Thursday instead. I decided to surprise Natalie by coming home early. I remember feeling excited on the flight home, imagining the look on her face when I walked through the door unexpectedly. I even texted my future brother-in-law, Mike, to ask if he thought I should pick up anything special for her on the way home. "Dude, she loves those chocolate-covered strawberries from that place on 5th, he replied. "Get those and you'll be husband of the year before the wedding even happens." So I did. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see her face light up when I walked through the door Wednesday evening. I even picked up her favorite flowers and a bottle of wine to go with the strawberries. When I arrived at our apartment, it was empty, no sign of Natalie. I checked my phone, no messages about her going out. I figured she must be with her friends, so I decided to wait up for her. I unpacked, showered, and settled on the couch with a beer to watch some TV. Our apartment still smelled faintly of her perfume, and I noticed her makeup was gone from the bathroom counter. She had clearly gotten ready to go somewhere. I wasn't worried at first. Natalie often went out with her girlfriends for drinks or dinner. But as the hours ticked by, a nagging feeling began to grow in the pit of my stomach. By midnight, she still wasn't home. I sent her a casual text asking if everything was okay, trying not to sound worried or controlling. No response. That's when the uneasiness began creeping in. I checked her side of the closet and noticed that the red dress I'd bought her for her birthday was missing. It was her favorite, a tight-fitting number that she said made her feel irresistible. I had always loved how confident she felt in it, but now the thought of her wearing it while I wasn't around made me inexplicably anxious. At 1 a.m., I checked her Instagram and saw that her friend, Jessica, had posted a story just an hour ago. Jessica had been Natalie's best friend since college and was going to be her maid of honor at our wedding. In the background of Jessica's selfie, I could see what looked like our apartment complex's community hall, a space residents could rent for parties. And I could swear I glimpsed Natalie's distinctive red dress. Jessica had always been a bit wild, single, party-loving, and from what Natalie had told me, somewhat jealous of our relationship. "She's still in her YOLO phase," Natalie would say with an affectionate eye roll. I had always felt that Jessica didn't particularly like me, viewing me as the reason her party buddy had settled down. Curious and increasingly concerned, I threw on some clothes and walked down to the community hall. As I approached, I could hear music playing. The windows were partially covered, but I could see flashing lights inside. This wasn't just a casual get-together. It was clearly a party, a big one. I tried the door and found it unlocked. When I stepped inside, I froze. The community hall had been transformed, dark lighting, music pumping, and about 30 people in various states of intoxication. But what made my blood run cold was the banner hanging across the back wall, Natalie's last fling before the ring. My fiancée was having a secret bachelorette party. While I was supposedly out of town, I stood in the doorway scanning the crowd until I spotted her. Natalie was in the center of the dance floor, that red dress hugging her curves as she danced intimately with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, tattooed, and had his hands all over her. She was laughing, throwing her head back in that way that used to make my heart race, but now made me sick to my stomach. The man whispered something in her ear, and she playfully slapped his chest before leaning in closer. They moved together with a familiarity that suggested this wasn't their first dance. Around them, people were cheering them on, drinks in hand, completely oblivious to the fact that her fiancé was standing just feet away, witnessing everything. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Then Jessica saw me. She was standing by the makeshift bar, phone in hand, probably taking more pictures for social media. Her eyes widened in panic, and she quickly made her way to Natalie, whispering something in her ear. Natalie's head snapped up, her eyes meeting mine across the room. For a split second, there was shock on her face, then something else, not guilt, not shame, just annoyance at being caught. I turned and walked out before she could reach me. Behind me, I heard her calling my name, but I kept walking. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just seen. This wasn't just dancing. This wasn't just a typical bachelorette party with girlfriends and maybe a hired dancer. This was a deliberate deception. The walk back to our apartment felt like a journey through a fog. I couldn't shake the image of Natalie in that man's arms, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. Was this what she really wanted? A life of parties and other men? Had our entire relationship been a lie? Back in our apartment, I sat in the dark, waiting. 30 minutes later, Natalie burst in, slightly out of breath. She'd clearly run after me, but had taken her time doing so. "Alex, it's not what it looked like," she said immediately, the classic line. "It was just a stupid party. The girls organized it as a surprise." I remained silent, studying her face in the dim light from the street lamps outside. Her makeup was slightly smudged, lipstick faded. The strap of her dress was askew. "Are you going to say anything?" she demanded when my silence stretched on. "And the guy you were dancing with?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "Just a friend of Jessica's. It didn't mean anything." "It was just dancing. God, Alex, it was a bachelorette party. That's what happens." "If it didn't mean anything, why hide it from me? Why wait until I was supposedly out of town?" She hesitated, then sighed dramatically, throwing her purse onto the coffee table. "Because I knew you'd react like this. You've always been so jealous and controlling. I can't have a little fun without you turning it into a federal case." That's when I knew. This wasn't the first time. The ease with which she lied, the way she immediately tried to make me the villain, it was practiced, calculated. "How long has this been going on, Natalie?" I asked quietly. "What are you talking about? Nothing's going on. It was just dancing." Her voice had risen an octave, a telltale sign that she was lying. I'd noticed it before when she'd claimed to be working late, or when she'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine and insist it was from hugging a coworker goodbye. I pulled out my phone and showed her what I'd found while waiting for her text messages I'd recovered from our shared cloud account. Messages she'd deleted from her phone but had forgotten were backed up. Messages to and from multiple men, flirtations, explicit photos, plans to meet, some dated back months, even to before our engagement. There was a thread with someone saved as Jay that particularly stood out. Jay, miss you already, can't wait for next time. Natalie, me too, counting the days till he's out of town again. Jay, worth the wait, no one makes me feel like you do. Natalie, same, just wish we didn't have to hide. Jay, soon babe, after the wedding we'll figure something out. Her face changed then, the facade dropped. You went through my private messages, she hissed. How dare you, they were in our cloud account, Natalie. The one we set up together for our wedding photos. My voice was still calm, which seemed to infuriate her more. And that's your takeaway from this, not that you've been cheating on me, but that I had the audacity to find out. It's not cheating, she said defensively. It's just flirting, everyone does it. And the photos, the meetups, the messages about after the wedding, what about the guy tonight? She switched tactics immediately, tears filling her eyes. I made a mistake, Alex, but I love you. The wedding is in 3 weeks. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I promise it won't happen again. I looked at the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt nothing but a cold emptiness. There isn't going to be a wedding, I said. What happened next showed me exactly who Natalie really was. She exploded in rage, screaming that I couldn't do this to her, that she'd spent a year planning this wedding, that her family had already booked flights. You have any idea how embarrassing this will be for me? She shrieked. Not once did she apologize sincerely. Not once did she show genuine remorse for betraying my trust. It was all about her embarrassment, her inconvenience, her reputation. Embarrassing, I echoed. You're worried about embarrassment. I just found out the woman I love, the woman I was going to marry, has been lying to my face for months, possibly years, and you're worried about what people will think. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, her tone suddenly condescending. Every relationship has rough patches. Every couple deals with temptations. If you really loved me, you'd forgive me. I laughed then, a hollow sound that made her flinch. If I really loved you, if you really loved me, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You wouldn't have been sending intimate photos to other men. You wouldn't have been planning your next hookup while planning our wedding. It's not like that, she insisted. Those messages, they didn't mean anything. It was just attention, just a game. A game, our relationship was a game to you. No, you're twisting my words, she was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, smearing her mascara. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost wanted to comfort her, to believe her. But then I remembered the look on her face when she'd seen me at the party, not guilt, just annoyance at being caught. I think you should go stay with Jessica tonight, I said finally. I need some space to think. She nodded, suddenly compliant, probably thinking she could still salvage the situation. She grabbed a few things and left, promising to call me in the morning, saying we would work through this together. That night, while she was gone, I made my decision. I couldn't sleep. I paced our apartment, looking at the photos of us on the walls, the books we'd collected together, the life we'd built on what I now knew was a foundation of lies. I pulled out my laptop and began searching through our shared accounts, finding more evidence of her deceptions. Email exchanges with an ex-boyfriend that had continued throughout our relationship. Venmo transactions to men with suggestive emojis in the description. A secret Instagram account where she posted photos of herself that I'd never seen, garnering comments from men that made my skin crawl. And then I found a message to Jessica from just a week ago. Can't believe I'm going through with this wedding. Keep reminding myself about his family money. Once I'm in, I can live how I want on the side. My family wasn't wealthy by any means, but my grandparents had left me a substantial inheritance that I'd mentioned to Natalie early in our relationship. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to buy a nice house without a mortgage. We talked about using it as a down payment for our dream home after the wedding. That was the final blow. I packed essential documents and personal items, emptied my personal bank account. Thankfully, we hadn't merged finances yet, and wrote a letter to my parents explaining what had happened and asking them to help sort out the wedding cancellation. I knew they would be devastated. They had loved Natalie, believed in us as a couple, but they deserved to know the truth. I emailed the managers of our various wedding vendors, canceling what I could and accepting the lost deposits. I sent brief, factual messages to my groomsmen explaining that the wedding was off and apologizing for any inconvenience. I didn't go into details, those would come later. By dawn, I was gone. I left the engagement ring on top of printed copies of her text messages on the kitchen table. Next to it, I placed a short note. Natalie, I deserve better than lies. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Don't try to contact me. Alex, I drove to my friend Mark's cabin by the lake, a place Natalie didn't know about. Mark had inherited it from his grandfather and had offered it to us for a mini honeymoon weekend before our actual honeymoon. The irony wasn't lost on me. I turned off my phone and disappeared from the grid. The fallout was nuclear, from what Mark told me after checking social media. Natalie told everyone I had abandoned her without explanation. Her family was livid. Mutual friends were confused and concerned. She played the victim masterfully, posting tearful videos asking if anyone had seen me, claiming she was worried about my mental health. But then my parents released the evidence with my permission to our closest friends and family. The texts, the photos of her at the party, the screenshots of her secret accounts, her narrative crumbled quickly. Jessica, surprisingly, was the first to break ranks. Apparently, once Natalie realized she'd lost me and my inheritance for good, she turned her rage on Jessica for not warning her quickly enough at the party. Jessica, fed up with being the scapegoat, posted a lengthy explanation on social media, confirming that Natalie had been seeing multiple people throughout our relationship and had often laughed about how oblivious I was. "I should have told you months ago," Jessica wrote in a private message to me that Mark forwarded. "I was a terrible friend to both of you. I'm sorry." In the weeks that followed, I learned more truths. Other friends came forward with stories of seeing Natalie with other men when I was working late. The guy at the party wasn't just Jessica's friend, he was someone she'd been seeing on and off throughout our relationship, a bartender at a club she frequented with Jessica. Apparently, everyone in their social circle knew about her various indiscretions except me. Our entire life together had been built on lies. It's been 6 months now. I stayed at Mark's cabin for 2 weeks, completely off the grid, processing my grief and betrayal. Then I made the decision to make a clean break. I moved to another city 4 hours away, found a new job, rented a small but comfortable apartment, and began rebuilding my life from scratch. The first month was the hardest. Despite everything, I missed her. Not the real Natalie who had lied and cheated, but the person I thought she was. The woman I'd fallen in love with, who I now realized had never really existed. I'd wake up reaching for her in the night, then remember everything all over again. The pain was physical at times, a constant ache in my chest. But slowly, things got better. I joined a local gym, started hiking on weekends, reconnected with old college friends who lived in the area. I threw myself into my new job, earning a promotion within 4 months. I started therapy, working through my trust issues and learning how to spot red flags I'd missed with Natalie. My family was supportive throughout it all. My mom called daily at first, then weekly as she saw I was healing. My dad, not normally an emotional man, told me he was proud of how I'd handled things. "You stood up for yourself," he said. "That takes courage." My phone still occasionally lights up with her number 21 missed calls last month alone. Her texts range from angry to pleading, "Please answer," and "We need to talk," and "I've changed." I never respond. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come home early that night, if the conference hadn't been canceled. Would I be married to her now, oblivious to her double life? The thought makes me shudder. The unexpected encounter 4 months after I left, I ran into Jessica at a concert in my new city. I was there with a coworker, enjoying the band and the anonymity of the crowd, when I heard someone call my name. Jessica looked different. Her normally perfectly styled hair was in a simple ponytail, her makeup minimal. We stepped outside to talk. "I'm so sorry, Alex," she said immediately. "I should have told you what was happening. I was a terrible friend to you." Why didn't you? I asked, not accusingly, just curious. She sighed. At first, I thought it was just Natalie being Natalie, flirty, enjoying attention. By the time I realized it was more, you were already engaged, and I didn't want to be the one to ruin everything. Then it just got complicated. She had ways of making me feel like I was overreacting, like everyone did what she was doing. Is she okay? I found myself asking, despite everything. Jessica's expression was a mix of pity and frustration. She's Natalie. She always lands on her feet. She moved in with that bartender for a while, but that fell apart quickly. Last I heard, she was dating some lawyer she met at a club. She hesitated. She still asks about you, though, if I've heard from you, where you are. Don't tell her, I said quickly. I won't, Jessica promised. She didn't deserve you, Alex. I don't think she even knows what she lost. That conversation provided some closure. Jessica and I weren't going to be friends. There was too much history, too much pain associated with her, but I no longer blamed her for her part in the deception. She had been manipulated by Natalie, too, in her own way. It's been 6 months now since that night at the community hall. I'm not dating yet. I'm not sure when I'll be ready for that, but I'm no longer angry all the time. The betrayal doesn't consume my thoughts like it once did. I've created a new life for myself, one built on honesty and self-respect. I've reconnected with old passions, playing guitar, hiking, photography that had fallen by the wayside during my relationship with Natalie. I've made new friends who know nothing about my past, who see me as I am now, not as the guy who was cheated on and left his fiancée. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted by disappearing the way I did. But then I remember the look on her face when she was caught, not remorse, just annoyance at the inconvenience. I remember the years of deception, the calculated way she maintained her double life, the message about marrying me for my inheritance. And I know I made the right choice. Last week, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from Natalie, 12 pages of apologies and explanations. She claimed to have gone to therapy, to have realized the extent of her mistakes, to have genuinely loved me in her own way. At the bottom of the last page, she asked if we could meet, just to talk, for closure. I read the letter twice, then placed it in a folder with the other evidence of her betrayal. Maybe someday I'll burn it all in a symbolic gesture of moving on. But for now, it serves as a reminder of a bullet dodged, a life that could have been filled with lies and heartbreak. They say the best revenge is living well. I'm not interested in revenge. I just want peace. And that's something I never would have found if I'd gone through with that wedding. So to anyone reading this who suspects their partner is being unfaithful, trust your gut. And remember that someone who truly loves you won't put you in a position where you have to question their loyalty in the first place. As for Natalie, I hear she's engaged again already, barely 6 months after our wedding was supposed to take place. A whirlwind romance with a wealthy businessman 20 years her senior. I almost feel sorry for the guy. Almost, but that's not my story anymore. My story is just beginning, and for the first time in years, I'm writing it for myself, not to fit someone else's narrative. And while it's sometimes lonely, sometimes difficult, it's honest. It's real. And that makes all the difference in the world.